All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Down Syndrome Association webinar tonight with Ivy Rehab for Kids. We're pleased to have Heidi Edgar with us, who's an OT within their practice to speak a little bit more about therapies. We know that many of our families are maybe very familiar or maybe very unfamiliar with different therapy supports, and we wanted to have this resource live, but also most importantly, recorded for families to look back on and families with the new diagnosis to look at. So Heidi is a wealth of knowledge. She and I were just chatting. It sounds like she's going to come volunteer at some of our camps this summer, which I'm thrilled by. But Heidi, I'll just let people in from the waiting room as they come in, but we can go ahead and get started.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. So I am very excited to present about unlocking your child's potential tonight. Exploring just those different options. This obviously is not going to be all inclusive, but it's going to be a little dive into what are therapies, what are the different types of therapies, where are the different environments, and then just some things that you might start to encounter as you navigate all of this. I do want to start. There it goes. Okay. Start by telling a little bit about myself. I am an occupational therapist. I've been one for 19 years, 17 of those in pediatrics. I live with my husband and my mom. My husband helps take care of my mom now. She's well and healthy. This is her in the picture. I took her with me when I went to a class in Virginia Beach. But my husband helped care for my father for 6 years prior to us moving here until he passed. And so he is my rock. He has helped me to navigate becoming the therapist that I am as well, and can see there the specialties that I have and the experience that I've done. And so I love presenting about these types of things and sharing my knowledge to help as many families as I can. A little bit about what I do at Ivy. I am the area director. I oversee 5 clinics plus my own primary clinic in Newark, Delaware, where I also am a treating therapist still as well. So today we're going to cover outpatient school, early intervention. What are those? What are the different types of therapies as you hear about occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy? What are some resources and adaptive equipment that you might start to hear about? And then I want to save time for any questions that might pop up so that we can broaden the discussion. So therapy settings, the three therapy settings that you're really going to run into are outpatient, school-based, and early intervention. And early intervention is going to also include your birth to 3, which is in the home, very much a coaching model. The therapist comes to you, and when I say in the home, that could also be at the park, at grandma and grandpa's, at, whatever that natural environment is for you and your child. And then from early intervention, you would transition to child find, which is for ages 3 to 5. And that is typically through your school. It is still, excuse me, I have the hiccups. It's still in the natural environment. The therapist still comes to you, comes to the school, comes to the daycare, different types of variety of settings there. And all OT, PT, and speech are typically offered through that as well. Now, as you start to transition into school-based services, those are based on the education model, meaning goals and therapy have to be geared towards educationally based goals and that education-based setting. That is your main distinction between school-based and outpatient. In outpatient, you can receive OT, PT, and speech as well, and it's based on the medical model, meaning that we need that medical necessity to receive services. In outpatient, we do see kiddos from birth to 21. And that will include even some of those kiddos in early intervention. And early intervention and outpatient can be received both together, depending on what state you live in. In Delaware here, I will let you guys know that early intervention does bill insurance. And so it can be a little bit convoluted to receive both at the same time. With outpatient, it's also very much a coaching model too. We do encourage families to participate and attend the sessions. We also recognize that sometimes you just need 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to just take a breather and take a moment to relax, and that's okay too. And so we do a little bit of both in outpatient, which is a little different than school-based and early intervention, where it is solely that coaching model, parents involved in every session, parents or caregivers involved in every session. So we've talked about what are those different types of things. Now, Ivy Rehab for Kids, we are an outpatient setting. We do not do any early intervention in the state of Delaware. I will let you know in PA, in Pennsylvania, we do offer early intervention. We offer occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. And we have two locations in Delaware at Newark at Churchman's Road, and we have a location at Wilmington at Silverside. We also have many locations in PA, so there are options for that as well. I want to dive into what are these things I keep talking about, the occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. So occupational therapy, this is the one I might spend a little bit more time talking about because this is my passion. This is what I do every day. In outpatient, we focus on daily activities. What do you, your kiddo, the family need to be able to have a good quality of life, to be able to engage in daily activities? And what do those daily activities mean? From an OT standpoint, that is literally anything that involves your day-to-day life, whether it's dressing, bathing, toileting, brushing teeth, getting a haircut, combing hair, washing hair, eating, play, engagement with family, engagement with siblings, engagement in the community, engagement with our peers. We really do touch on all of it. And then we touch on those things that fall into and go in conjunction with it. So like, how do we regulate our emotions? How do we handle those emotions when we get upset and frustrated and don't want to do something, or we want to do something and we're not able to yet? How do we collaborate with others? How do we coordinate? Some of the things that we really focus on and have some therapists that are specialized in our feeding. So whether that's aversion to textures, taste, or difficulty with oral motor skills, so the difficulty to chew, swallow, and eat a variety of foods. We also have therapists trained in pelvic floor, so difficulty with potty training, having that awareness of when do I need to void my bowel or my bladder, knowing when I need to go and how to get there is also included in that. We have therapists who are trained in DIR floor time, and that is a model that supports kiddo first, family first, and recognizing that we all have emotions, we all have needs, and how do we balance learning about ourselves and then being able to engage in our environment through, safe play, safe spaces. We also work on visual motor. We also do adaptive equipment, and I will dive into the adaptive equipment a little bit later, so I'm not going to really touch base on that too much right now. In terms of visual motor, you might see that sometimes vision is a big thing. A lot of kiddos might need glasses, those kinds of things. While we don't do that part of it, we'll work on things to help the eyes work together, to help the eyes define things, to be able to look at our environment and see what we're looking for. Something called figure ground, being able to find your shoes in a big messy pile, or get your shirt and shorts out of the closet when all the other clothes are in there as well. And that then ties right into all those other daily activities of, think of a morning routine of being able to get yourself dressed, being able to get down to the door, get to school. OT is able to work on all of those things. From there, physical therapy. So a PT, physical therapist, assists in strengthening balance and that functional mobility and all the muscles that are tied into being able to navigate our environment. They will also look at any need for orthotics. We'll dive into what those are in a little bit, as well as maybe some tools or equipment for mobility, maybe a walker or other types of things, especially if kiddos fatigue easily, looking at wheelchairs. Some of those things sound like really scary things, but if they help our kiddos to engage in their environment and be more independent, we really want to support that. And then speech therapy. Speech therapy looks at a lot of different things. They can target the articulation, which is the ability to speak clearly. They can look at receptive language, which is our understanding of words and directions. So being able to follow a direction, being able to remember those directions. And then expressive language. So that ability to use words, sentences, gestures, or even a communication device. And those types of devices, known as an augmentative and alternative communication, you also heard them called AACs, can really support language development because there is a beauty in having the repetition of hearing words over and over again as well. As children, we need hundreds of repetitions of new motor patterns and new words and new phrases to help with that motor memory. And that can be supportive through an AAC as well. It never takes away from the development of language. It only supports it. Speech therapy can also work on fluency. So for a child who stutters or has difficulty with getting their words out, this can help to build for those, they can help to build for those skills as well. And then all in conjunction with the social communication. So their ability to communicate with peers, with others, to be able to maintain that conversation, that back and forth reciprocity. And a lot of times you will hear that speech and OT work together on these things because language ties into play in so many ways. It is such a big part of daily life to think about. That is how a child learns, is through play. And so we want them to get as much from that play as possible. And that can be structured play and unstructured play, because there's a lot to be said for unstructured imaginative play and seeing what we can come up with on our own to work on problem solving, frustration tolerance, as well as many other emotional skills. So as we think about a new diagnosis, or even just starting to hear all these strange words, new things, multiple, people talking to you, giving you ideas, where do you start? What do you think about? We've talked about what the different therapies are. So I want to just dive into what are some things that might be out there that you might not know about, or things that you already know about, but you want to know more about. So the first thing are specialized beds. There are beds out there that are specifically made to support the natural sleep-wake cycle, as well as the support positioning, assistive, the kiddo has maybe some support for feeding through a G tube or an NG tube, which means a tube through the nose or through the belly already, as well as positioning. So a sleep safe bed offers beds that the mattress can be elevated at the head, elevated at the knees, offers a lot of support for that. And then the cubby bed is a supportive enclosure bed. It, when fully, decked out, it has a technology hub that does ambient lighting, does music, meaning like soft sounds, white noise, brown noise, those types of things, as well as an enclosure to support that sense of safety. That also is typically done in coordination with an occupational therapist and assistive technology professional, someone who works with a company like New Motion, National Seating and Mobility, or others. And then orthotics. These are pieces of equipment that are worn either on the feet all the way up to the knees, depending on what the kiddo's needs are. An AFO covers the ankle and the foot. A KAFO covers from the ankle, foot up to the knee, and then inserts just go in the shoes. And there are many others that a physical therapist might work with an orthotist to support if additional support is needed at the ankles due to low tone, or a little bit of an insert due to a fallen arch, anything to help support that mobility and upright positioning. Mentioned earlier about communication devices, and so you will hear about low-tech options and high-tech options. Your low-tech options are sign language, picture communication, and that literally is a little card with an image on it that then is used in exchange for the actual item. This could be used to start to identify foods, preferred activities. It's a way to start building that language repertoire. Sign language, I feel like a lot of people are using that these days with the increase in baby sign language. And so your simple signs of more, all done, help, get utilized a lot across all sessions. And these are all ways just to reinforce language development. And then the high-tech options, like I talked about a little bit already with an AAC, there are multiple new apps that would support this. And you would work with a speech language pathologist to coordinate which one is the best for your child in their learning and language development. Some of the options I have listed there do support, and they're all based on different ways of how it's presented. Some offer all the pictures all at once. Some you can tailor it. It really depends on what is recommended based on your child's learning. Adaptive trikes and adaptive swim lessons. So adaptive trikes are really cool in that they are three-wheeled tricycles, but they're specially designed to support and increase independence and mobility. The two big ones that I've really worked with, I actually did ambux trikes when I lived in Georgia for 6 years. And these can be adapted to have specialized seating, specialized handlebars, foot pedals, and also different sizes. So they will grow with your child as well. So we get itty bitty ones all the way up to full size ones for adults. Freedom Concept trikes are very similar. They tend to do theirs through insurance, and so it has what makes them a little bit different in that your therapist would complete a letter of medical necessity of why they need this and to support getting out into the community more, engaging with peers and friends and family. Versus Ambux does theirs based on donations, and oftentimes once you find a chapter, the trike is ends up being free because of the donations that have been provided by other people. I know I hope to be able to share all these slides with you guys because there are links within them to be able to support your exploration of resources as well. So adaptive swim lessons. I know that the Down syndrome has their amazing summer camps that are for swimming as well. And since those are only in the summer, I did want to let you guys know about the SWAM program at the YMCA. And now, while this does stand for swimming with autism, and don't let that deter you in that these are instructors who have been trained in adapting the swim lesson for safety and ensuring a safe swim and a safe swim environment. The biggest thing to recognize there is that the goal is for safety at the water, whether that's at the pool, at the beach, at the lake, at the pond, even in the bathtub. When we are around water, we want to promote that safety. Swim Angelfish, Swim Whisperer instructors. There are a couple in Delaware that are listed on their website. Now, these instructors have been specially trained and are trained to adapt the swim lesson and focus on that safety as well. The additional benefit there is those swim instructors tend to be individual professionals who will come to your home pool, to your community pool, or that they offer swim lessons somewhere specific.
Heidi, while you're taking a drink, one question I thought that maybe you could answer at the end is I think many of our families are aware of some therapies or more cognizant of therapy services when their kids are, let's say, under 5. And I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of posts in our parent group from families that have older kids that are struggling with, for example, texture issues when eating and having very limited diets, or maybe struggling with some skills at school. So, how could families kind of re engage, I guess, with therapy services? Should that be, I think a lot of times within schools, the parents are the ones that need to kind of prompt that with the child's team. But I guess what are some things that when children are school aged, families should have in the back of their head that might be helpful for therapy services, like the textured food things, for example? This was just a big discussion in our parent group. So maybe if you could speak to that a little bit specifically too.
I would love to speak about that, and that is actually right in my wheelhouse. So that aversion to textures, and
Hmm.
we'll come back to the other things. The aversion to textures, sticking to only the preferred foods, the known textures, can delve into a lot of different areas. One, it can just be these are the things I like, and I don't want to explore something new, and so we have to work on the emotional capacity of that. And how do we explore? How do we safely explore and know that we're going to be safe when we explore it? The other side of that is many kiddos learn these are the foods that I know I can consume safely and consume in a certain amount of time, especially thinking about at school, lunch is only 20, 25 minutes. And I know even as a grown up for myself, that is not enough time to eat lunch for me. And so I eat very specific foods, but I know I have a limited amount of time. And our kiddos learn to do that too, even if they don't articulate it and express that. And so they've learned I can eat this food, I can eat it safely. And so this is the food I'm going to consume. And so then we have to take a look at why are those the only foods that they can consume safely? Is it because they lack the oral motor skills to be able to manage a different type of food? So meaning, do they lack tongue mobility? So their ability to move their tongue side to side, up and down when there's food present. So they may be able to do it when they're making those silly faces at you and other times, but we have to then pair that with the ability to manage that food when it's in the mouth at the same time. It may also just be that they're getting tired. We know that with Down syndrome, the lower tone can impact our muscle fatigue. And so, just like any other muscle in the body, the muscles of the face can fatigue. And so, some of those more challenging textures are just a little bit too hard to manage. And so, how do we strengthen and build up that muscle? Even if the resting tone is a little lower, that does not mean that your kiddo will not be strong. And then pairing all those things together. So it may be that we need to work on strengthening. We need to work on how do we manage the food in our mouth and how do we manage the food from when we chew it on one side to get to the other side and then manage it to swallow it. Or, is the passageway a little bit too small? And then we're going to pull in speech therapy to look at that swallow and make sure that we've got enough room. Do we have enlarged tonsils, enlarged adenoids, or just a small passageway that if we can't get the food in our mouth down to a small enough size, it feels like it gets stuck. And so then we need to coordinate not only the oral part of it, the oral motor part of chewing and managing it in our mouth, but then the swallow part of it as well. And typically that swallow part is handled by a speech therapist. We would want to make sure that they are swallowing safely. If they have a history of like multiple ear infections, or they consistently get watery eyes or a runny nose, those are all signs that maybe we're not managing our food or our liquids as well as we could be. And we want to have that checked out. And so even for those older kiddos, it is possible to work on exploring new textures and exploring new foods. It does just take a lot of buy-in from family and the kiddo because they get to an age where they're like, nope, I'm not doing this. I don't want to. And so we got to figure out a way to help them want to be a part of it as well and show them that they still have that autonomy to make some choices, but we're still going to learn and explore. So it is possible now in a school-based setting, they may not be able to work on that because it's probably not impacting education, even though we all know that if we're hungry or hangry, we're not learning very well. So it is, but it gets a little trickier to address that in the school-based setting. But that doesn't mean that you can't receive outpatient services to address those feeding concerns. And so that would be very much where you would reach out to an outpatient facility and say that you want to address those sensory concerns related to feeding and work with an occupational therapist or a speech therapist, depending on where the difficulty is arising. The same is also true for school-based kiddos who maybe are having fine motor issues or gross motor issues. If they're not truly impacting their school day based on what the specialists there in the school identify, then they may say, oh, they don't qualify for school-based services, but that does not mean that they don't qualify for outpatient medically based services. Those types of things an outpatient can address a lot more than can be addressed in the education model, just because we're not limited by education-based goals only. We can do anything that really is medically necessary to support the kiddo in their functional independence so that they have that improved quality of life. You guys have that improved family quality of life and support that overall growth and development. That could be anything from improving fine motor skills to help with fasteners for self-care, or even to work on, we wouldn't necessarily maybe focus on handwriting specifically, but maybe it's to be able to play games more with their friends, to be able to color better, to be able to cut, to be able to paste, all those other things that tie into fine motor as well. And the same is true for speech therapy and PT. So if, for instance, they qualify for social skills group or something similar in the school, that doesn't mean that they still can't come to outpatient to get additional services, because often it's only a group setting in the school, or it's a small group, or just consultative services. And so if that's not enough, you can have both at the same time. You can have school-based and outpatient, and PT the same way. PT does have the ability that sometimes education is also, being able to play on the playground, being able to play at recess. And so they do have that to tie into the education. But again, those are things that we can do in outpatient too to help support and work in conjunction with. Definitely for those school-based kiddos, I will say probably the trickiest part is sometimes just the scheduling. And so that's where it's always important to communicate what those scheduling needs are and work in collaboration with your therapist and with your outpatient clinic. And knowing that it is okay that we have the ability to give school excuses, to say this is where you were, And if it's something that we can work on in one plan of care, meaning one plan of care is typically 12 to 13 weeks. If we can coordinate with a school to help support that, and if that's going to help support their overall independence, most schools are on board to help uh, with that time, knowing that they're going to miss a little bit, but that in the long run, it's going to be better. Does that help answer a lot of that question?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. That was very helpful. I will be sure to post this recording in that thread with a lot of people talking about texture issues with food because unfortunately, I think people are approaching it as it's a food related issue. And I think that it probably needs addressed as like an overall holistic view of kind of what's causing the aversions to those specific foods, right? So, for
Yes.
example, we had thought about bringing in a nutritionist to talk about some different food options, but after thinking about that, I'm not sure that's a great step one. I think that's probably a step two or three once these immediate things are addressed first.
Yeah, because oftentimes I will coordinate with a nutritionist very often because they're such a valuable resource. But if they suggest, all these great high,
Mhm.
vitamin, mineral rich foods, but if the kid doesn't eat them, not
Yes,
going to force them. And so we have
exactly.
to get back to the root of the problem. And
Yeah,
just like an adult, a kiddo is demonstrating a behavior, but there's always a reason behind that behavior. It's
yeah.
never just to make someone angry.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So yes, that I will make sure to share this with that group. Because it's definitely I've heard from many of our families that their children are limited to let's say 10 foods, and that can be really hard for planning and purposes in general. So I'll make sure to share that, and you have some great resources in these slides. So I'll definitely send these slides out as well to the group. If you could email them to me, that would be great.
I definitely will. And I'm happy to share more of those resources because you're app, when you hear that someone only eats 10 foods, like you think, oh, that's not much at all. And it's really not because honestly, those 10 foods are probably also brand specific. And then it's also package specific. So if the company changes that
Exactly.
package, it became a brand new food and now it's off the list. And typically, by the age of like 5 or 6, and on up, we should have about 50 plus foods in our variety of our diet. And that can include knowing that chicken fingers and chicken nuggets and chicken tenders are all different. And they all count as separate foods because they are all a little bit different. But we do want to have a nice variety to ensure we're also getting all the vitamins, minerals, nutrients, protein, all those things that we need on a daily basis to support that growth and development. So definitely an area I'd love to be able to support a little bit more if we need additional resources.
I was just going to say, are you willing to do a separate webinar on that topic? Because I feel like we need that, or even something maybe in person would be helpful. But it's a huge need of our community. And I know a couple of folks on this call have struggled with that specifically too. So I'm sure this is helpful.
Yes, I would definitely love to dive into that. And whether it's virtual like this or in person, definitely feeding is one of my big passions. That's actually typically most of my kiddos, I would say half of my kiddos are feeding based only. They're the ones
Oh,
that
good
are
to know.
coming in for
Okay,
specifically that. Yeah.
great. Okay, perfect.
Yes, yes. To dive back into some of these additional resources, I want you to think about, I wanted to share some of the sensory friendly things. We hear a lot more about this, like Walmart has their sensory friendly hours from, I think it's 8 to 10 or 7 to 11. It's in the morning, but those are typically the times that the grocery stores and the big stores are quieter. Walmart specifically, what they do is they turn off the radio, they turn off the TVs, and they have all the lights dimmed during those hours. And a lot of other stores are starting to do that as well. But it can be hard to get out that early in the morning. So, what are some of those other options? And what are some of those other places that you can go to be a family and have fun all together? The Delaware Sensory Museum is not open yet. I do know that if you go to the website, it says coming soon. They are, just starting to get out in the area and starting to advertise, I guess is the best word I have there. They are building that though. AMC and Regal, they do offer sensory friendly times for their movies. You just have to go to their individual websites to look and see when and where. Um, as I was diving in, I did a little bit bigger dive digging into this and found the Hands-on House Children's Museum. It's all the way up in Lancaster, but it looks like an amazing place that I had never heard about until I was like doing some extra research to see what else is out there. And then I also, I'm aware of some kiddos that I know that go to the Delaware Dance Academy for their adaptive dance classes. I don't know the specifics of when they're offered because this was a little bit ago when these kiddos were in those classes, but I do know it exists. And so that's always a fun option to get out and be a part of that. And then also from a community standpoint, obviously Delaware Down Syndrome Society of Delaware has so many amazing activities, and so I have to highlight those as well. But I also want to highlight Special Olympics. The Special Olympics of Delaware has a phenomenal program where they have multiple activities. They have different sports. They do year round. I know that there is soccer, bowling, I believe ice skating, and I am probably missing so many that they have to offer. And so that is also a fantastic website to go through and check out all the activities that they have to offer. So I do want to ask, I know I've answered some questions. I would love families if you could come off mute and ask any of your specific questions, see what I can answer and help support and guide.
Hi Heidi, I am Pradnya. My daughter has Down syndrome, and we usually participate in Down Syndrome Association's program. Like how you said, it's very helpful, resourceful. We meet other friends, so we feel really nice. So, if I may ask one question, so we were getting speech therapy at Ivy Rehab at Middletown Center, but the center, I guess, got closed and it was going very well. We were absolutely loving it. So my question is like, is it shall I just visit Churchman's office to get the therapy started again? Like, what should be the path that I can follow? Because I'm really anxious to get it started as soon as possible. So if you can guide me.
Yes, I would love to. And we were equally as sad to close that center. I will share as the area director, it was a very difficult decision. However, I was not able to keep it staffed. And I know from the perspective of the parent, it's so hard for me to keep telling you, please just keep waiting while I look again. Please keep waiting while I
Yeah,
look
yeah.
again.
And we were like really loving it. So we were so sad when we heard that.
Yes, yes. But yes, we would love to have you up at our Newark location. You are welcome to come up and stop in person, or please give a
Okay.
call. The number will be on the last slide, and I'm happy to share that out so you have it now. It's if you have something to write with, I can give you the
Yes, yeah,
number.
yeah. I'll write it right down. And is it near BJ's for the Churchman Road? Is it near?
It's
It's
and
kind
not
of
far. Do you know where Artesian Water is or the birth center?
it's sort
No.
of near like Christiana Care, like it's that 273 intersection. It's right off the main road where
Oh, okay.
like
It's
where
like in
Barnes and
Charles and
yeah,
Toys R Us, I think, used to be there,
yeah,
and now
I
it's the
see.
market.
Okay. I got
yes.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where the
Okay.
Toys R Us used to be. Yep.
Ah, see, now it immediately clicked. Thank you. Yeah, I'll
Yes,
note
yeah.
down, or even if you go to, whenever you go to next slide, I'll take the picture. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
I'll
can just
try to
pop over to
visit.
that.
Oh, thank you. I'll take a picture of that. And if I visit, I'll try to visit the center maybe during the work hours, or I may call. And then if I'll be happy to reset for speech therapy sessions again. So that would
Yes. Yes, we would love to help support in that. I have
be.
two amazing speech therapists that are on full time, and then I have PRN, meaning therapists that work in the evenings. And then obviously, we do our best to coordinate those schedules. And so, always trying to work with you guys to help support, especially we know our family's coming up from Middletown. It's a little bit of a drive, and so we
Yeah,
want to do our
we used
best.
to. It was so convenient, but that's okay. I think little bit. I think we really like the setting, like the therapist. It was really nice. So we were actually. So when I saw this webinar coming, like I must go and talk. I want to start again. So
I'm so glad that you came on then. Yes, we'd be happy to support. You're welcome to give a call. You're welcome to reach out in person or shoot me an email and I'll get your information over to my front desk.
I'll
thank you
share
so
Heidi's
much.
yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
share Heidi's information with everyone too.
Thank you. That's huge. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. What other questions can I answer? I did want to save a lot of time for that. I knew that that would probably be the big part of this. And, are there questions that have been on the forums or the chats that have come up a lot, or any other questions?
I've heard from a lot of families that, I guess, fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of the school districts are really looking to the parents to come up with some of the goals of the different therapies for the IEPs, which is difficult, right? If families aren't familiar with what that's supposed to look like. So, for example, I was brainstorming with one mom, and she was like, they're asking me what his OT goals should be for middle school, and I have no idea. So, we had brainstorms like, what about working on a locker combination? Like, that is a skill that's hard for anyone, right? That could
Mhm.
be worked on. But I guess, do you have any ideas or suggestions of kind of out of the box, I guess, things that maybe aren't don't come forefront to mind that you've seen kids work on in OT settings that have been really helpful, especially for that school age? Like, I guess some maybe uncommon things that people might not immediately connect with OT.
Yeah, definitely some of the things I would think about, especially considering that school-based model. And now I will share the caveat. I have never truly been in the education setting. And so my goals may have a little bit too much of a medical twist to them, but they are things that could be tailored to the education model. And those might be, um, the ability to problem solve, how to get from class to class, thinking about middle school and high school, the ability to have the energy. So from a PT side, to get from one end of the school to the other, the executive functioning to keep track of everything. I've been hearing now that some schools don't have lockers and that kids are expected to carry everything with them. How do we problem solve that? How does the kiddo keep track of everything? And so not only the educational piece of how do we attend in class, but how also the educational piece of how do we keep track of everything? How do we keep up with our binders? How do we keep up with our agenda? And those all fall under what would be called executive functioning skills, the ability to problem solve, the ability to sequence, the ability to organize, the ability to recall, and whether that's from a visual cue or from just mental memory. And so all of those could be tied back into that school-based setting to support. I also would think about, in terms of knowing how to sometimes even just ask for help appropriately. Like, I need to go to the bathroom. How do I ask for that without, interrupting? How do I raise my hand? How do I do it without just getting up and leaving? Because I know that's what I need to do. Those types of skills as well can be tailored to the school-based environment to help support that functional independence as well as that engagement to be in that regular classroom if that's appropriate. I have heard this that the therapists, the teachers are asking the parents, well, what do you want to work on? Well, you guys may not always be familiar with what's happening in the school in the day to day. You know the basics of what they need to work on in terms of math, reading, and those types of things, but what are those individual little pieces that make up the day to day? I would also say to make sure that if you haven't already, at least know who your advocate is for your school district or your school, because they can be a wealth of information to make sure that you're not missing anything when it comes to those school-based services. And I also, while it's sometimes hard to think about because, it's only your kiddo's only in, fifth grade, sixth grade, but start talking about those transition things in terms of what what are you going to do when they, are 18, 19, 20? What do they want to do? And looking into what are some of those options to shadow, to observe in other places, to be able to learn job skills, life skills. Some schools even have life skills rooms where they work on, how do you do laundry? How do you do the dishes? How do you write well, not many people write a check anymore, but I was about to say, how do you write a check? Um, those types of activities as well. And then just being able to think about what are those transition types of items that we want to progress towards. Our goal is always for our kiddos to be independent, to be functioning in the community as adults, and that's sometimes a little bit tricky to think about when they're younger in elementary school or middle school, but that should be our goal. We want them to be an adult. We don't want to raise a child, we want to raise an adult.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Yes, I think it's all great things to think about. And I think people kind of limit themselves sometimes in terms of what therapy encompasses. So I think it's helpful to kind of hear some out of the box things that they could potentially work on. And I'll just say one thing that I've advised families on is taking a look at the timing of therapies within school. So, for example, a 5-year-old having a 60-minute speech therapy session is probably not going to serve them very well. And maybe look at that and see, could it be 3 20-minute sessions throughout the week? I think children that age, especially, get way more out of shorter, more frequent sessions than a weekly longer session. So, I mean, that's something that parents can advocate for and ask about. So, it's just another thing to keep in mind. But you've been a wealth of information, Heidi. I really appreciate you doing this. Does anybody that is on the call have any other questions for Heidi about any sort of therapy needs or questions?
Lauren, I have a quick one.
Sure.
I'm sorry. And Heidi, thank you so very much. I have a 13-year-old, and I wasn't 100% sure if I quote unquote needed this, session, but like I'm so glad that I was on it because I'm like re-inspired like by a whole bunch of things that you've said and like I want to follow up. So speaking of following up, is your place, is there like a, multiple month waiting list to get in to do therapy with you? Like have we missed the summer window basically?
You haven't missed the summer window. I will say that we are a very busy clinic, and I'm not going to lie, we are full. However, kiddos are always meeting their goals and discharging. And so, definitely for our OT, we are taking on new kiddos. Our speech, there is a little bit of a wait list right now, but we're actively coordinating with families to, best meet everyone's needs and do what we can. We do not have a months-long waiting period at all. And I will say our Wilmington office does not either. They actually just hired a new OT who started today. And I'm going to boast a little bit because she was my student about a year ago, maybe now. And so I'm really proud of her. But sorry, side note,
That's right.
both of our offices definitely are accepting new clients and new kiddos because that's what we're here for. We are here to help you all, help the community. And so while we do sometimes have to wait a little bit to figure out that coordination of those schedules, we do our best. And what I always say is we always figure it out. And so no months long waiting list, no, nothing like that. I know that that is pretty standard in a lot of places, unfortunately. But I know we actively have openings for OT, and we're currently working for those openings for speech and PT as well. And I believe Wilmington has definitely openings for PT and OT at this time,
Thank you
and
so
speech
much.
daytime as well, I believe, if I'm perfectly honest off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad you hopped on.
I also have a quick question. We have a son who's hard of hearing, and we've actually gone to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia through their speech clinic and kind of been told that we should get like outpatient speech therapy. But we're running into the issue because he is hard of hearing. He's very ASL dependent. And so even the school ran into this issue of like speech is really great for him to have that 30 minutes, every week, but he's also very ASL based. And so if a therapist doesn't know ASL when, he's either signing the words or like, what's your suggestions on like, he knows over like 300 to 400 words in ASL at a third grade. So he's very rich in his ASL language. It's just trying to like, one, get it verbalized, and two, also increasing his ASL knowledge. But he he can't express back. He can answer simple questions or one or two phrases, but it was like a suggestion to get him, he is 9 years old. And
Yeah,
so like how do we get him to a bigger understanding level? And then also I think it's expressive, like the way when he responds back to people, like that really needs support verbally or ASL. And it's like what's the best way to like seek the right therapist, if that makes sense,
it
that can support
does.
it.
Yes. And so I actually wonder if, and I'll have to dig into who the contact people are, but reaching out to the Delaware Deaf and Blind, because they're going to have more people trained in ASL. And I wonder if they could offer us guidance and resources as well, because I'll be honest, I know 10 signs, and I know most of my therapists know the handful, the ones that we all know,
Yeah.
type of a thing. But hearing that, I want to support your son. And so I wonder, I actually knew someone who worked there, but her name is not coming to me at this moment. But if you don't mind, I will dig into that and I will pass that along and see what that has to offer. Because I wonder if that's going to be your best bet in combination with possibly speech therapy. But I think you're going to need someone who's trained in ASL, honestly, just to really support that development
Okay.
to the fullest potential. So I would love to dive into that and get you some options and resources just to explore and see if that is the route. If not, see if I can find a speech therapist who's ASL trained as well, bilingual.
Yeah.
If it's
Just a-
okay, I can connect you with Heidi via email, Nikki, if you're okay with that.
yeah, that
Okay,
works.
perfect. Okay, great.
Thank
And
you.
I'll connect you with another family of ours too, whose son
Whose
has
son has
Down syndrome. He actually has a primary diagnosis of being deaf because that was helpful in getting some services for him.
yeah.
But he does communicate verbally. I don't know if you've connected with her before or not, but if I'll touch base with you offline, but that would be a good connection for you too. Her son's about the same age.
Okay, yeah, that would be definitely. I wish he'd have more words. More he just like signs two or three at me and is demanding. But
So maybe we need to work on some coping too, but that's it. Let's get him that
yes.
language.
Yeah, which I mean we also have looked at, and I don't know if you spoke a little bit about this. I was trying like to do bedtime at the same time, but um behavioral therapy, we kind of have been suggested to do that, but I don't like you don't ever hear anyone talk about it because you have your speech, your OT, your PT. Is there one that like focuses on behaviors, which I mean we also look at it of him not being able to communicate could be some of the reasons we have those behaviors, but is there a specific one that focuses more on behaviors than another?
OT is going to work on those behaviors from an emotional standpoint. So, like I just mentioned, like he signs you his three and he's like, I told you what I wanted. Why are you not understanding this? While you're looking to engage more in that conversation, he's like, I already shared. And so there is something called applied behavioral analysis. You might have heard it as ABA. My only caution there would be, as you already just said, he is communicating, he is sharing, he's shared what he thinks he needs to and is ready to move on. And so the behavior is that he's getting frustrated that he's already shared and maybe he doesn't have another word to express the next thing. And that's also frustrating. And so I do wonder, like the outward sign that you're seeing is the behavior of the frustration and the I'm done versus the I just need more words and I don't know how to tell you that I need more words, which is a language piece and a coping piece versus a behavior. We all have behaviors in life and they're just an expression of a need that hasn't been met yet. And I think his need is more language.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. That was a great question. There any other questions I can answer at this time? I'm here. I'm happy to help. And I love that we'll be able to make some connections afterwards as well.
Thank you, Heidi, so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You are obviously a wealth of knowledge and very passionate, so we appreciate you taking time out of your evening. I'm sure you had a busy day. But if you can email me the slides, I'll follow up with everyone here and also that was interested. And we'll make the connection there. But we really appreciate it. And thank you for being on.
You're very welcome. It has been my pleasure because you are absolutely right. This is my passion. This is what I love. And so I am happy to speak on it and speak on multiple times if necessary. What I'll do next is I'll hop off and I'll share these slides over to you. And then please reach out if there's anything else I can do.
Heidi, thank you so much.